Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today's guest dreamer is Albert Bramante from Union County, New Jersey. He is a talent agent, a psychology PhD college professor, and author of Rise Above the Script, Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists. So we're going to get into all that and more. You can find him at albertbramante.com, link in the description, of course. For my part, would you kindly like, share, and subscribe? Tell your friends. Always need more volunteer dreamers. I do video game streams Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific, most days of the week. This episode brought to you in part by ABC Book 8, The Literature and Curiosity of Dreams, Part 1, part of a 2-volume set out of 1865 by Frank Seafield, collecting various curious tales of sleep and dreams, as well as references to dreams in classic literature. It's great stuff. Of course, you can find all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, including downloadable MP3 versions of this very podcast, so you may take the wizard with you wherever you wander, with or without Wi-Fi. I love alliteration. And, of course, last but not least, if you'd head on over to BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, it's free to join, attached to my Rumble account. One of the best ways to reach out to me if you have a dream to share. You don't have to be an author or a PhD professor. I'll talk to anybody. So that is enough out of me. Albert, thank you for being here. Appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for having me, Benjamin. I'm really happy to be here.
Good deal, yeah, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to pick your brain as well. But we'll get to we'll kind of transition into the dream talk maybe in a minute, unless you wanted to start somewhere. I figured we'd start with your book, and you can tell me a little bit about why you wrote it, or what the purpose of it is, that kind of thing.
Sure. I'll go that briefly. So I work with actors. I've been doing this for about 21 years. And when I first started working with actors, I kept running into an issue where they were telling me how much they wanted to work, and one hand, and on the other hand, their actions were telling me another story. They were coming up with excuses. They would sometimes be late to auditions, no show on auditions, and it's something I really couldn't understand in the beginning. I couldn't really wrap my head around why there was such a strong disconnect from their words versus their actions.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was going for my PhD, we had to do something called dissertation, which is like the culmination of it's like a full 1 to 2 years worth of full-time work. It's like writing a book, in a sense, its own little book. So for my dissertation, we had to solve, our instruction board to try to solve a real-world problem. And my real-world problem is, why were these actors self-sabotaging? My dissertation committee at the university loved it, so I went ahead and did that. And then several years later, I decided, why don't I turn this into a readable book?
Oh, yeah. You already did most of the work. You just got to kind of, finish it. Although for writers, they say, the writing or the success of writing is in the editing afterwards. Once you've just onto the paper, then you got to make it make sense.
And that's what I did for a while. I sat and I did, 2 hours a day. Like in 2023, I sat down and, disciplined myself 2 hours a day of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was done, about 2 months later, I said, I'm going to go through editing. And I went through two rounds of editing with 2 different editors, just to kind of like really give it the best. So, that took a lot of time. And I am a big proponent. I think that editing is very important.
Absolutely. I mean, that's basically what I do with my books. None of these are original yet. I'm taking older works. And actually, just to throw this out there, in terms of turning a PhD dissertation into a book, I believe it's ABC Book 14 is Dreams in Homer and Greek Tragedy. And it is the PhD or professorial submission back in the 1800s, I think, of a guy who was studying Greek literature to find references to sleep and dreams, tease them out. Like the Greeks had 8 words for love. Well, they had like 5 or 6 words for dream and what it means to dream and different types of dreams. And are we talking dream the experience or dream the Greek god? And they all capitalized and small lowercased and used different words, and it's fascinating stuff. I did a whole lot of Greek translation for that, which I never thought I'd do. And who knows what you can do until you just kind of try. So okay, back to you though. Sorry, I will talk about me all the time if we don't bring me back. Did you find some common themes in actors specifically, where this type of person, because of their proclivities, tendencies, personality, tends to delay or self-sabotage for certain reasons that might be different than others, or is it more common human experience, or both?
I would say it's common both. What usually comes up, and what even my research has found this out, was fear. Fear was a big driver, and also lack of discipline. So if you have like the high amount of fear and low discipline, that's like the perfect storm, for self-sabotage, in a sense. So that was the biggest thing I kind of found out in my research, was there was like a link or relationship between those two things. And so, I talk in my book a lot about, fear, we talk about fear of failure, but also there's another fear that is often not talked about enough, and that's fear of success. And that is something that can be something that can hold an actor back, or anybody back,
Absolutely.
or paralyze you if you have that fear of success.
Yeah. That makes me, I mean, we commonly conceptualize or refer to these things as two separate things. A fear of failure is one kind of thing, embarrassment or lots of stuff tied up in that. And fear of failure or fear of success as well. But sometimes I wonder if they're two different sides of the same coin. I don't know if you found that, or if you, am I on the right track with anything like that? I just have these ideas and I'm not sure if they play out.
It's still a fear, regardless.
True.
And a lot of fears are heavily related.
Gotcha. Yeah. What I was writing down there while I was listening to, I got to take notes or I'm not going to remember anything. It's Swiss cheese brain, as I say. I stole that from Quantum Leap back in the day. You remember that show, Quantum Leap? Dr. Sam
I've
Beckett.
heard. I didn't get to see it, but I do remember hearing about it.
I haven't watched it in a while, and it's probably hokey. And, it blew my mind as a kid, and I'll go back and watch it, and it won't, the nostalgia might carry me through, and it might not. But when I was younger, it was one of the best series ever. It's like, this is theorizing he could travel within his own lifetime. Dr. Sam Beckett steps into the machine, and then you got Al the hologram. Oh, like, it's so good. Well, I got that line from that show. It's leaping through time into different people's consciousness, into different people's bodies. He describes himself as having Swiss cheese brain. That stuck with me for life. 30, 35 years later, 40 years later. Anyway, that complete tangent. What I wrote down was there's kind of a process to dealing with these things, and people out there might not know, and feel free to correct me, of course, if I've got some step wrong or I'm describing it incorrectly. But first, you got to figure out what is true. You do the research. You say, okay, what are people experiencing by their own self-report or by observation? Then you want to understand how it works. What's happening? So what is it? How does it work? Then a critical step comes there as well. It's like in therapy, it's like the therapeutic interaction is not like other process flow charts where there's kind of a predetermined goal in the beginning. After you figure out what it is, after you figure out how it works, then you got to figure out, well, what do you want? Do you want this to change? Are you okay with it? Did you just need to understand it and that's it? Does the process stop there? And then after that comes, okay, now what do we do? What intervention do we put on it? Do I have those? Does it seem like those are properly in order? Okay. That's, I feel free, like I said, feel free to correct me. I just have these ideas and I write them down. I'm like, I think this is how it works. And the two things you highlighted there, the fear of either failure or success and poor discipline, that has got to be a killer combo. And that's kind of where, okay, so what is true? It looks like you have a fear of failure. It looks like you have poor discipline. Now let's look at how that instantiates itself in your life specifically. And then you can decide what you want to do. Do you even want to be an actor? Maybe you don't. Maybe at this point in the process, you've got to, you go, I'm not actually putting my heart and soul into it because I'd rather make donuts. But I feel like that's not enough. I feel a pressure to perform higher than that, but I just want to, it's time to make the donuts. I just want to be that guy.
Yeah. And that happens. That's always, sometimes people go into, wanting to be an actor, maybe do it for a couple of years and then, realize that, it's not for them and they change and go into another profession.
Oh, yeah. especially people who maybe they've never really done it before, and they're like, they have an idea of what it's going to be inside their head, and then they get there and they're like, this is terrible. I don't enjoy this process. I don't really want to be doing this. That doesn't surprise me at all. I thought I wanted to be an actor at one point. I thought I wanted to be a lot of things, but when I was in a play just once at 17, and I was terrible, and I realized this is not for me. I can't do this well. So I took a different path. I actually also wanted to get into again, making it about me. Sorry, I wanted to get into philosophy. I actually wanted to be a philosophy professor. I'm like, I love this, just thinking about ideas and opening people's mind to stuff. And then I realized I hated school and academia in general. So that's why I bailed with the bachelor's. I'm like, that's far enough. I can get a job and just talk to people about stuff and try and help them. And that worked out pretty well, I'd imagine, until deciding I'd rather be what is it? Abandon academia, embrace wizardry. That was my motto. Let's do this differently. I don't know if there were any other points about the book you wanted to relate or highlight, or if you wanted to switch gears and maybe talk more about the psychology of dreams in that sense.
Sure. I mean, the book, I'll say really quickly about the book is
Sure.
that it's geared towards actors, because in the title is performing artists. Anybody can benefit from it. So whether any profession, because we all deal with self-doubt, that comes up. There's a lot of actionable strategies that can be universal to anybody in the book. So I definitely recommend checking it out.
For sure. Yeah, and that's so it seems like the it's tough. So here's the thing with me is like I lack motivation to exercise more. I just do. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to be mobile. I love sedentary pursuits. I love talking to people. I love working at my computer. I gotta really force myself to get out there and get moving, and I just don't. So that I have poor discipline in that regard. But I don't have the concomitant comorbidity, so to speak, of the fear of failure. Like I've been healthier in the past, and I just don't. So that's a big one, that discipline thing. So in step one, you got to give yourself permission to fail and to succeed. You got to say, hey, I might not be good at this, and that's okay. But also to succeed and not feel like a pretender. Like, hey, other people tell me they like what I do, but I feel like I'm not good enough at it. That's also completely normal. Most pretender syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretender or imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would say that that's normal, to feel that way, occasionally that things will come up. And one of the things I even talk about in the book, the statement, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So even if you mess up, whether it's, doing a presentation, going on an audition, take whatever lesson you learn and don't dwell, don't beat yourself up over it, but learn from it. What can you do next time differently?
I like that. I'm actually writing that down too. No such thing as failure, only feedback. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. If you didn't, and that's, I don't know, some people get pedantic and they're like, well, if you didn't do it right, or if you didn't do it to a certain standard, then you failed. It's like, I mean, fair enough, but that's not the point. That's actually some original books I want to get down to. One of them is like A Wizard's Guide to the Aspirational Aphorism. It's like, yes, there's exceptions to the rule, but this is how things work mostly. And here's how an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Doctors are not afraid of apples like vampires are afraid of crosses. That's idiotic. So people dismiss these things, but it's like, no, but if you eat healthy food, you're less likely to need a doctor. And I mean, most people grasp that, but some people are just, it's mostly written for the internet crowd of today where they're looking for something to argue about. Let me tell you what these things really mean. And some of them are a little less easy to understand, but I wanted to start with an easy one. I'll do an alphabetical list. I'll do 26 chapters, each one. And then for Z, it'll just be, it'll be the one about when you hear hooves, you think horse, you don't think zebra. That's another good one. I love these pithy phrases that are, anyway, that's a thing for another. If I ever get around to writing actual books, I've got so many ideas. That's got to be another thing too. Is like people like me whose brains are just, you got so many ideas and just zero follow through with 90% of them. I'd rather just troll people on Twitter half the day, and, and maybe
Yeah.
mow my lawn and do a little woodworking or something. It's like, what am I doing as a profession? Well, I do enjoy this. This is fun, talking to people. It stimulates my brain. This is what I've chosen to do with my life, and now my latter years. Like I said earlier, I've got 807 dream interpretations to go before I become a real wizard. And for me, that actually means something. I'm trying to live up to the metaphor, or to the archetypal presentation. I tend to think you become what you do in that way. So if you perform wizardry genuinely, you are a wizard, even if you can't conjure a fireball. I kind of can. If you go to benjaminthedreamwizard.locals.com, there's a recipe for the Dream Wizard's Fireball Cider, a delicious beverage. So I can technically, I conjured a fireball. I can claim that one. Anyway, we're not talking about you. Enough. Let me get back to that. I don't know if you want to jump straight into your dream thing, because we are, we're short on time today. We got maybe a half an hour left ish, or a little more.
Sure. We can jump right into that. And
okay.
I encourage you, if you want to follow me on social media, and we'll talk further if you want to know about my book. I'll be happy to.
For sure, absolutely, and we're gonna plug that again at the end, and definitely check out the link in the description. Everybody out there listening. So my usual process is I shut up and listen, step one, and then you'll tell us your dream, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So I'm ready when you are.
Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks exploring the psychological principles which inform our dream experience, and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, documenting the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
Okay, I'm ready to go. So I've always, as I said in the to you previously, that I have vivid dreams. And some of my dreams are on the absurd side, that that sometimes even wonder when I wake up, I'm like, should I really tell anybody about this, or maybe I should keep this to myself? So one particular dream I had, which I wanted when I was came across your podcast, I had a dream where I died, okay, and I didn't go to heaven. I went to hell, or what they call hell. And in it, there was another girl, and we were in a dungeon, locked in the dungeon. It was a beautiful dungeon, actually. And what's came out was the devil, or what you call Lucifer, or Satan, was a woman. I think she was almost like I got the vibe like Ethiopian woman, and beautiful. And not at all mean. She said, I assumed it was hell because she said, you're not in heaven right now. And she said, we started having an in-depth conversation in a dream. And in the dream, she was telling us how she's the Bible and everybody misunderstands hell. That it's not the polar opposite of heaven, but a rehabilitation center. And that her and whoever you want to say is God are partners, not adversaries. And I don't remember too much after that, but it was just that was the gist of the dream.
Okay. So slow to writing. Okay. Got it. I love that one. I love them all, honestly, but that one's truly, truly fascinating. I mean, if I were to just stop and say, okay, what resonates with me out of that? And maybe, because I'm always trying to say, the broader concept of transference and countertransference. What I don't want to do is insert myself into your dream and say, okay, if this was my dream, how would I feel about it? So to avoid that, I have to acknowledge that maybe right off the start. So what resonates with me about that is I think that's literally true. I don't if I were to just wax philosophical for 2 seconds, hell isn't punishment so much as it is absence of God, just like darkness is absence of light. So, and I tend to believe personally that we create our own hell. We do things in this world where when we're clothed in this numbing flesh, it's like it's a buffer. It makes us feel things in this physical world, but I think it buffers us from seeing the truth. And when we get out of the flesh and we can look back and we go, oh God, did I do that? It's like watching a video of yourself from 10 years ago and you're embarrassed and I can't believe I did that, and you're regretful. So hell is what we carry with us, the regrets we carry with us, and then we have to rehab it. We got to dissipate it. We got to, and I think even in the Christian tradition, in a way, there's Jesus dies on the cross, he's resurrected, and he ascends. But first, before actually going to heaven, he goes to harrow hell. He goes to hell too to show us the way. You got to go through hell to get to heaven. In that sense, you got to dissipate the evil in your heart or whatever it was to get. So I'm like, I just think you had a prophetic dream telling you the way the universe works. That would be one answer.
That was the initial impression that I received. I was like, there's something here, more to this here, because it wasn't scary. And I'm not. I'm not a religious person. I'm not, I don't consider myself religion, but I always had, and I don't really have to get into this too much here, but I always had some questions about the traditional teachings, about, heaven and hell. I had a lot of questions, because a lot of stuff wasn't adding up, in my head, well, logically. So, and maybe that was part of my projection too into this dream too, was the fact that the traditional teachings weren't not adding up for me. But again, and I say that for me because I don't want to appear to be dogmatic or pushing my beliefs down anyone's throat. But it was just for me. I've always had some issues with traditional doctrine like that. So again, maybe that was my own way of confronting that too.
Absolutely, and that is, I think, one valid answer. We don't have to stop there, but we could if you're satisfied. I mean, I'm not recommending we do. You were going to say I cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this was not the first religious dream or crazy dream, zany dream I had about religion. That stood out for me. So, and maybe you could even argue as a psychologist, I have a little bit of religious anxiety, maybe, who knows? Because the first time, and I don't know if, you want to hear about this, but I had a nightmare about religion. And it was enough to jolt me out of it. Was when I took a nap, I jolted out of it.
Ooh, those are good. Those are good ones. The bad ones are the good ones sometimes. So.
Well, I also come from my psychology background. Also believe that nightmares are really valuable.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean by a good one. It's like if something is really troubling you enough that it's going to express itself in the dreams and really show you how terrifying it is to you. There's something there you probably want to have a look at. I think that's very, very true. Yeah. So this dream we haven't even got into the content. We're going to do that for sure, but just talking around it. So that was telling you my story, and my perspective was also kind of to open the door a little bit to this is definitely, every dream is personal. It's not in my head, it's in yours. So but to let you know where I was coming from, so we could tease that out, but also to say to suggest that that's a possibility, and I think there's probably a reason why it would resonate with me similar as it did to you. So that's probably a layer of it, maybe, or a vertical layer, and there's others. So I don't know. I need to figure out how to explain stuff with diagrams. People need to see it, but first I need to understand it. So we're going to work on that. Did you, at the time this dream was happening, have reason to be seriously contemplating the broad categories of consequences, punishment, redemption? Was there something going on related to that at the time? I'm looking for themes.
Not quite, but I've always been a very deep, person when it comes to like, death, meaning of life. I mean, I even taught a college class, a couple of times on death and dying. So I think that I've always been a very that towards the gravitates me to very deep. I tend to be a very deep person. So I think maybe that I don't quite think anything specifically was going on at that moment. Mm-hmm. But I've always I have always do have questions about existential questions about like the unknown.
For sure.
What happens when and I've always said, I don't know if I believe the traditional doctrines of heaven and hell, but I kind of am more convinced that this is not it. Like when we die, there's got to be another dimension, and I'm convinced of that. What it looks like, I don't know. And I don't think we're meant to know. Exactly. So I just have a really really strong thing against just saying that we just go into nothingness.
Yeah. I mean, that I've always thought that was possible, but it seemed unlikely. That's just kind of where I'm at. Like, 60-40 type of thing, where it's probably more likely whatever we are is energy, rhythm, vibration, and it continues to vibrate after the physical form is no longer necessary or present. Here come the cats, right on the paperwork. Hi, buddy. You can't have that. No, you can't he loves to lay on my mouse pad when I'm using it. He only wants to lay on my notepad when I'm using it. Come here. Come over here. Go over there. Or get up here. I don't care. Whatever you're going to do. Come on, buddy. Come on. We don't know. Ain't nobody got time for this. There we go. What do we got here? So there's other elements too. There's a lot of, what am I trying to say? So I asked that question very specifically, is there a reason you can think of? You can't. Maybe there was. Maybe there was something in the environment that sparked a random thought at 11:03 in the morning one day, and it was gone from your head by 11:03 and 3 seconds, and then that popped up in your dream later because you wanted to explore it further, of course. So it could just be.
I mean, I always listen to like the radio or watch TV, so who knows that something could have flashed, beyond my conscious awareness that triggered that thing. Who knows? Something that.
But it wasn't tied to a specific event where you had reason to think, okay, how do I understand what happened to me or what I experienced, and then how do I feel about it? What do I want to do about it? I get a lot of things like that going through my head too. Is why am I thinking about this right now? I don't know what sparked it, but it's the kind of thing I think about all the time. Definitely. So it's more of an ongoing pondering about the nature of the universe and whatnot. It is. Then, of course, it's always interesting, but what elements you chose to show yourself this, what you think is likely, or how you're at least theorizing or conceptualizing something. So you've got, I wrote this down and left it on its own line. I died. That is uncommon in most dreams. Most people do not die, especially the falling dreams. Look at this guy. He just wants to be held like a baby. I'm busy. I'm so busy, and you got to be like this. You can't help but love him. So a dream that starts with death is highly unusual. And that's fantastic, I think, too. But it's also reasonable in the sense that if you're going to explore this and have a dream experience that takes you to seeing and experiencing what happens after death, you have to start with, okay, you're dead, and now you're somewhere else. You only knew you were in hell after they said that, or after the devil lady told you, or did you?
Well, she said that it's called hell, but it's not supposed to be that way.
It's not a place full of torture devices, or is it? Yeah. So that was the other thing too, is to get a better look at it. You were.
Now, I could have only been in of course, it was my version of it. I don't know. Everybody else's version may be different. But I didn't see I see more of a self-imposed torture that comes into it.
Yeah, that's why it resonated with me so much. It's like, what are you trying to get out of this experience? Well, you wanted a conversation. You wanted understanding. You weren't a person who thought you needed to be punished, or probably that would have shown up there.
Yeah.
Let me see here. So you described it originally as locked in a dungeon. So was there, now it may have been a very beautiful, well-appointed, clean, nice dungeon, but it was the typical kind of medieval stone walls.
Yes.
So you knew it was a dungeon. How? What makes it a dungeon versus a throne room or a bedroom?
Because it was black, and there was stuff like this stone walls, and the other person was in chains.
Okay, so that was another question I was going to tease out. Was there was a female there, but then the devil showed up, so there were 3 characters total.
Yeah.
Okay, and this other person, you mentioned them, but never again. So you didn't describe them. You did not interact with them.
I didn't really get to see things. I just saw a young girl visibly upset and distraught. And she was talking. The devil, the female, was talking to both of us.
Gotcha. So where was this? How were you situated in the room? Like sitting in a chair, standing by a table?
I think I was just sitting on the ground. I wasn't restrained though, but I was sitting on the ground.
So you not in chains, but then a girl next to you, on the ground.
Across from me on the ground.
Across from you, like facing towards you, or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she was chained to the wall, to the floor.
Yeah. Chained to the wall.
Chained to the wall, but in a way that where she could sit down and her arms up, down.
She was distraught. I could see that.
She was. Did she appear to be harmed in any way, or?
No, more mentally distraught, like anguish.
Gotcha. Interesting. If what pops into my head, and you can tell me if this resonates at all. Rules for this stuff. The answers are not in my head. I'm telling the audience now. Yeah. I make a suggestion. You tell me whether it's resonates or not. You should feel a zing, head to heart or head to gut. If it doesn't, I'm wrong. I rattled a doorknob that did not come open. Don't ever feel any pressure to validate the wizard. I'm here for you. It's not the other way around. Okay. What popped into my head when we were talking about this, and now again to remind me, is the Jung's work of the animus and the anima, and so there may be, if we go with that, the suggestion might be that the girl on the wall in chains is your female half, the feminine, divine feminine.
I didn't think of that, but that makes sense because I love Jung, so and I think that's very powerful. So it could have been that, now, and then because I do happen to sometimes be experience intense emotions.
You got to get up. My arm's tired. Oh, cats. They want so much love and attention.
I know they do.
And my thought, okay, building on that, if first check in and you're like, it could be. Okay, fair enough. Now, what is it about you or the way you're composed, the way you think, why is if she's your female half, so to speak, or the divine feminine within you, why is she in chains? Why is she suffering in a way that you're not? So that, rather than just asking you, I'm going to suggest as well that there may be, being in chains and being in hell suggests you've restrained your feminine energy, and that it may be necessary, and then why is a different question, but it may be necessary because she's a little bit, has a tendency to be a little bit out of control, be a little bit overly emotional, and you've got to keep that in check. So, in the broader scope of things, to reverse it, if I was talking to if you were a woman instead, if she had her masculine side chained to the wall, then she's restraining that for her own reasons, whatever that would be. So you could say, wow. Actually, let me stop making suggestions and say, based on what I've said so far, what do you think about that? And can you build on it? Is there more to say?
Oh, I think, that definitely makes a lot of sense, projecting, our the anima, the internal state. Now, I've always been, one thing I've gotten, overcome a lot of this stuff, but I was always very sensitive, even as a child and as a adult. And I would go sometimes be intense, sometimes, subject to intense moods, swings. I'd say especially when I was younger. So we could even argue that could have been not only the anima, but even my younger self there, representation.
Sure.
There, just again in a female form.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I won't let him get on my shoulder again, so he's biting my finger. Okay, we'll play. And that's an interesting thing too, because it's a matter that the devil goes on to explain. The Bible's got it wrong. Of course, you got to address that's the most common understanding of how these things work. It's not punishment; it's rehab, and and then she's partners with God, and this isn't. So there's what is it? Rather than you looking at the anima and saying, this is what I think, it could be the anima talking to you, say, this is how I feel. This is my, I am, and then you're looking at that, you're looking at you unrestrained, and I'm thinking dispassionate, rational conversation. You're, meeting of the minds with this devil figure, that you're looking at the alternative way to understand the situation. This devil or Satan or whatever is telling you this doesn't have to be punishment. This is what you bring to it. And then you're looking at someone who brought pain and suffering with them and put themselves in chains. Like, they don't have to be like that. Probably that person on the wall there could release themselves and say, so that's two different ways of looking at it. I mean, sometimes you do need to restrain the negative shadow side, whatever, of those. There's, shadow to both the divine masculine and feminine. So maybe it's proper that it be restrained because it's necessary. And maybe there's some restraint there that is causing misery, that it's put itself in restraint. That's how it feels to that half. I don't know. I don't know if you know where I'm going with that, or if I don't think I'm articulating very clearly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different layers to that. It's also interesting that you would, and maybe not, maybe, what am I trying to say? There's a lot of the yin yang wholeness of opposites coming into this thing. Definitely the idea that God and the devil are not opponents, but partners in a process. That's a yin yang. We're fitting the light and the dark. We've got the male and the female there. We've got in chains. We've got free. We've got a dungeon that's not a dungeon. We've got the place that is supposedly filled with pain and suffering and infliction of torture, but it's not. You just have a nice little chat. And then you've also got the idea of the iconic image of God that most of us in the Christian world would say is an old white man with a robe and a beard, and that's God. But then the opposite, his counterpart would be black, female. Ethiopians are notoriously short or small, thin, etc. I don't think many of them get very tall. It's maybe I'm wrong. So that's another balance of the opposites there. I don't know. Maybe I'll just stop there and get your feedback on that too. The idea of all these different balances and opposites.
Yeah, I know it's very interesting that you did say the opposite. I didn't really think of that. The yin yang portion of it. I mean, I did get powerful. I didn't, like I said, with her, the devil representation wasn't scary at all. Mm-hmm. She wasn't scary. But in fact, I felt really calm and comfortable around her.
Yeah.
and she was very, very like dressed, like in to the nines almost, like, really, really beautiful, in a sense, and really articulate in their speech. So, but yeah, I mean, the yin yang thing, because the push pull, I feel makes a lot of sense. Um, and even because even if you look at traditional, doctrine, heaven and hell is a definite yin yang, push pull, and Satan and God are push pull. If you wanted that, but again, as I said, I've always had struggles with that my entire life, wrapping my head around the traditional teachings.
Oh,
So, I don't know if this is just my way of working through it.
very well could be. Yeah, like epiphanies come in their own time. I say this all the time, and I had this conversation with a fella yesterday, which would have been last week by the time people see this. We were talking about the ideas of, oh wow, is it gone? No. What was I talking to him about? Balance, opposites, heaven, hell. Oh Jesus, I think I lost it. What were we even talking about?
Oh, the yin yang and that.
Yin yang, balance. Damn. I had a brilliant point. Let's just pretend I said something amazing,
Okay.
and we'll forget about it. What I was writing down as you were talking was that I love analyzing these things across so many different dimensions, because there's also a cultural expectation that has its roots in, you could call it evolutionary psychology, but it's like human behavior in general. There's an expectation that men will restrain the emotional feminine because men have a greater capacity for violence. And if we lose our shit, people get hurt. We get hurt. Other people things get destroyed.
Yeah. Well,
that kind of thing. So there's a good reason for it. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. No, what you're describing is Darwinian evolutionary psychology, right there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
From a Darwinian perspective, and that is the fact that men are, supposed to be the protectors and breadwinners, and if that falls apart, the whole family is going to fall apart, and this could explain why, most the ideal man profile of a man is always the alpha.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or as some folks have said recently, you want to have the capacity to be an absolute monster and then control it, because it's not the same thing to be harmless, to be incapable of violence. So it's not the same thing. But then the flip side of that, again, we're trying to pair all these opposites. Women are expected to master their aggression. So the emotional feminine is men have to suppress in a way, and the aggressive I wrote that word down, like that's not the right word. Do you have a different concept of that? What is it what masculine element are women expected to restrain to perform their function best, or to best succeed?
Again, dominance, social dominance.
Maybe that's what yeah. Dominance. Maybe that's a better word for it too. And it's very interesting because that leads into that. There's an element of that in this dream too. Even if the devil and God are partners, she is the submissive one in a sense, which would have to be a female in hell, because he sets the rules. He decides who gets into heaven, and she's just here to help you rehab your soul so that you can become worthy. There's an interesting dynamic of that too. I don't know if that's going anywhere, or it just popped into my head, that thought. There was no further interaction with the woman on the wall, or a girl. You said young.
No.
She was young. Did she have any distinguishing characteristics? Was there anything about her that stands out to you? Yeah, she's black, white, tall, short.
She was black.
Okay.
But she, I really couldn't see her face that much because she just kept. It was like she was trying to bury her head into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Like, trying not to be seen. In a sense.
Gotcha. Embarrassed to be observed in her predicament. Yeah. Gotcha. And that's interesting too. So we've got white man. Your internal opposite would be younger black woman. That's great too. Is also with that balance. What else might stand out here? It's trying to give you as much as I can from as many different angles. I always describe this as, I tell people, of course, as I did, the answers are not in me, they're in you. What you do as the dreamer is invite me into your head to stand behind your shoulder and shine a flashlight around saying, hey, what do we see over here? And then hopefully we get something. But do any elements of the dream stand out to you as in most puzzling or incomprehensible? I don't know how to ask that better.
I mean, well, we kind of already touched upon it. I think, like I said, the whole thing is like, well, this is kind of a weird, odd one to be a random dream.
Yeah.
A little deep. But I think that was pretty much it. And again, I think what makes me, I mean, this is my first time ever really sharing it publicly, but I think, also part of the reason why I might have been a little subconscious sharing it with other people is, again, the whole religion aspect of it.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm with you on the I am not explicitly a Christian. I have tremendous respect for the traditions and wisdom in the Bible, as I do with a lot of other what I refer to as mythologies. Sorry, Christians, but I consider myself an agnostic, atheist, deist. Which is really, I know it's weird. People say that's impossible, that's stupid. And well, each of those words means something to me. I'm an agnostic. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to tell you the way the universe works. I got ideas, but I'm not a prophet. Atheist, meaning I don't subscribe to a particular religion in total. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not Muslim or anything else. And then deist, I think there is a God. I think as conceptualized by the idea of a creator of the universe that is outside of time and space, God said, "Let there be the Big Bang," and then we had evolution. And that's how He made mankind. That's how I look at it. Which means that deists are famous for God's kind of hands off. So I'm not really sure Bible miracles and talking to people, but I think God does talk to us in a sense. If God is the way, the truth, and the life, or whatever Jesus said, every time you have a true epiphany, every time you discover a true fact about the natural world, that is, in my estimation, literally God talking to you. And I hope that's actually part of what I do as well, is I open myself up to the spirit of being beneficial to the person I'm talking to, and things come through that are useful. How did those ideas happen? Where did they come from? I don't know. That might as well be God, so if I can be a little self-aggrandizing there, but I think that's how it works for everybody. So I'll stop there for a second if you have feedback or comments.
No, and that's truly true, because I couldn't tell you where that idea came from. Nothing in my waking life, I wasn't even thinking about that for a while. But again, as you said, something I could have subliminally heard something on the TV or radio that I left on.
Sure.
That just triggered that reaction, or my mind, again, something prophetic. Who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Well, I'm if we accept that epiphanies are communication from God, if broad strokes, then true dreams that tell you true things about yourself or help you see yourself or understand the world better is also God talking to you in your dreams. I think it's there's a long tradition of that. ABC Book 2, The Mystery of Dreams, is a big old sermon I've reproduced from 1535 England, where he talks about how to tell dreams sent by God to inform, to inspire, and delusions sent by the devil to lead you astray, to feed into your lust and bad habits and all that different stuff. Great work. I love these books. I love them so much. That's why it's a joy to produce them. But we are just about at your time limit. I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything else real quick, or we'll wrap it up either way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open. I mean, and I think, part of me is I'm a right-brained type person, so I tend to really have very vivid dreams. Sometimes they're almost like movies, like picture quality.
Nice. I'm jealous. I hardly ever remember my dreams, so
I don't have them that often. Well, I mean, there's no way we dream every night. We just don't remember them.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the ones I do remember are like, right there. Sometimes I'll have, if I don't write it down, sometimes I'll wake up, I'll know I had a dream, but then, 10 minutes later, I completely forgot it. like kicking myself because that could have been a great idea.
That ephemeral quality. It's like trying to catch a cloud in a little bell jar. It's so hard. Yeah. Well, let's get you out of here on time. This doesn't have to go on for. I've gone as long as 4.5 hours, but that's not happening today.
Yeah. Well, no, I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, and then also, I mean, the last thing I would ask, and I want an honest answer, and we can cut it out if you don't want to say it's or whatever, or you can give me private feedback, and then I'll delete it if you don't want it out there. Being that you are an education level above me, and I'm, or two rather, master's, PhD. I think I did. Is my process? Does it seem legit? Do I feel like I'm approaching it well, performing it well? Just a little, pat on the head, or I'm just looking for feedback. It's not failure, just feedback.
No, I really appreciate this. It was a very easy flow. You asked great questions. I really felt connected, and we had some great insights. And I think the common interest we have in psychology. I mean, I really, I didn't even think of like Jungian aspects here, of that. And you brought that up, and like I said, I'm a big. I love to work with Carl Jung, but it was now that makes total sense.
Very cool. Well, not to put you on the spot, but I'll take it. That's 100%. I appreciate it. Always looking to do it better, but I'll take the praise too. That's good. Well, let me do this. Let's get you out of here. This has been our guest dreamer, Albert Bramante from Union County out in New Jersey. He is a psychology PhD college professor, a talent agent, working with, of course, actors, and he is the author of Rise Above the Script, Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for the Performing Artist. You can find him at albertbramante.com. That link is in the description below. For my part, would you kindly like, share, and subscribe? Tell your friends. Always need more volunteer dreamers. I do video game streams Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific, roughly, most days of the week. This episode brought to you in part by ABC Book 8, The Literature and Curiosity of Dreams, Volume 1, part of a 2-volume set by Frank Seafield out of, I think, 1865. He was writing books on dreams when we were just finishing up in the middle of the Civil War. It's crazy to think what people were doing. Anyway, you can find all this and more at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, including downloadable MP3s of this very podcast. And if you'd head on over to benjaminthedreamwizard.locals.com, that's where you'll find one of the best ways to contact me. It's free to join, attached to my Rumble account. That is enough. Albert, good talk. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you again for having me, Benjamin. I'm really happy to be here.
Wonderful. Good times. And I love the praise, so that doesn't hurt my feelings at all. Okay. Everybody out there, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.